All right,
Fine.
welcome everyone. Welcome back to Politics and Plastic. It has been a while. Today I'm joined by Tom Leighton. Tom, how's it
Hey,
going? How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad to be back. I enjoyed last time, so I enjoyed it so much. I came back to talk about my favorite topic, which is of course cynicism.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
love it. So
So thanks for joining me, Tom. I
anytime.
thought of you specifically because obviously something like the ITC is a big topic that I know you've mentioned a lot on Honest Wargamer, and I know you've got a lot of
It's a
strong
big part
thoughts
of
on
my life, Jim. I love the ITC. I really commit a lot of energy and a lot of effort to my ITC. So
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
just I'm a perfect person to bring on for this one.
Right. So for those of you that are just joining us for the first time, Politics and Plastic is a used to be a weekly show and now is like a semi-annual show at this point that I do where we pick one kind of topic that is a little spicy and we kind of dive really deep into a specific topic and talk about it for the full length of the show. So today we're going to be talking specifically about the Games Workshop partnership with the ITC and kind of and then broaderly in a broader sense as well. The ranking systems overall for competitive 40K and competitive I'd say Warhammer in general. I mean, obviously I think AOS is we can throw them in the bucket as well. For those of you that are new to the channel, I stream about 3 to 4 times a week on Twitch and YouTube, mostly just hobby and paint content right now. But I will be picking up some of the shows back up again as I start to get back into the hobby. I've been on a bit of a hobby hiatus for the last few months, as many of you know. But yeah, so right off the top, Tom, I haven't talked to you in a while.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, what's
Since the
new
last
and what have
Policy
you been working
Plastic,
on?
right?
And yeah, how are you doing?
Well, you asked me what I'm working on. I'm not working on anything that's actually meaningful. I'm currently working on an Ogre More Tribes More part. I don't know if anyone can see that.
I know what they
No, not
are.
really. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I just want to show off my painting, Jim, to be honest. But I mean, it's fair
You're
enough.
more than welcome to do that.
Um, yeah, I mean, apart from that, I've mainly been working on Gene Stealer Cults for the new book, right? We've selected the team for Team Wales now, so we're kind of at that stage where everyone's kind of trying to pick what they're going to play, but at the same time, we're so far out from WTC, and we know we've got so many books to drop. I mean, we've got Tau just coming out next week. We've got Craft Worlds just around the corner as well. And then we've got whatever books come after that. I mean, we've already said that Tyrannid's going to be the next new book. That's going to be massive because we know how impactful Tyranids are in the current meta, especially with how the WTC boards look like and how impactful Hiveguard are specifically. So we're still working out kind of what everyone's going to be playing, but equally we're trying to forecast, like we're trying to work out also what other books are coming out. So we need to be flexible. That said, Gene Stealer Cults are one of those books where I think it's going to take some time to learn it properly. So I'm kind of getting on that now, assuming that I'm going to be playing with it because it looks like one of those books that's going to do really well on these specific boards. So I played my 7th game of Gene Stealer Cults this morning. Starting to get a bit more of a grasp of the rules, starting to understand a bit more about how I want to play with it. I think that compared to how it was in 7th edition, where what I was doing was I was running something called the Cult Interaction Detachment. Were you playing in 7th edition?
No, I jumped from third
Okay.
edition to seventh to eighth edition.
Okay.
I missed five
Okay. I'm going to
editions.
describe to you what this shit was. Okay. So I had like 23 units deep striking. What you do is every time you deep strike, you'd roll on a table. On a 5, you could like make a move and then charge after you deep struck outside of a certain distance. And on a 6, you just deep struck out of this like a certain distance away and then you charge. So on a 5 or a 6, you were very likely to charge your opponent. What you could do is you could run a formation where you got 2 rolls for each of your units. So I took 23 units, deep struck all of them, and then just had about a third of them charge straight out of deep strike turn 1. And then what you could do is pop them back into deep strike and regen all your dead models.
So absolute filth.
So I did table a teenager turn 1 at an
Nice.
event once.
Get get
It
get
was
those get
very
those
funny.
get those kids before they get too confident.
He still plays, man. He still plays.
Nice.
He's a good lad. It's called Byron on the UK scene, but he was playing Tau, so he deserved it.
Yeah,
So
I definitely heard lots of horror stories of like seventh edition Taunar and like the weird Death Stars and like all that kind of stuff. So I'm kind of glad.
yeah, yeah,
I made a conscious choice not to play seventh edition, even though I
mate.
was starting to kind of get back into 40K at that time. I knew eighth edition was on the way and I kind of avoided it. So
Oh, mate, there was this thing where you'd basically have, when you were playing Chaos at the time, you'd have a choice between, you could take 2 of the 3 things when you were taking like Chaos list. You could take a Dog Star, which is basically Flesh Hounds with characters in with invisibility. So it's like a little Death Star that ran around casting powers. You could give yourself the ability to summon, or you could take Magnus. But
nice.
you couldn't fit all 3 in a list. But what I managed to do was get Magnus in the summoning and then make a Death Star. But instead of taking the Flesh Hounds because I couldn't fit them, I just made it out of cultists. And then I gave them a relic that allowed them to fly, and I made them invisible. So I was just floating around with like 12-inch move invisible cultists protecting my characters, and it was glorious. There was so much wacky shit towards the end of 7th edition, you wouldn't believe it. It was amazing.
See, I think a lot of people are kind of, maybe newer players are confused by all the weird, like, I guess, nicknames for some of these lists, like Thick City, but things those weird names have a storied history in 40k. Dogstar, like they go back all the way to like many editions of ridiculous names for specific like meme lists and stuff like that. So
Draco Wing, all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
I think that's definitely it's definitely something that I feel like is going to continue in the game as well. What do you think of that? Just not getting too off topic, but like, what do you think of that idea of having these kinds of like list names in general? Like, do you think that we should be naming them after the creators, or do you think coming up with a kind of more funny names is better?
I mean, because like with the creator thing, there's always going to be like a different variant that turns up. Like the Nidzilla that we're seeing right now is different from the Nidzilla we saw in like 4th edition, right?
That's true.
Just because it's big monsters doesn't mean it's like, do we still name this Nidzilla after the original creator of the Nidzilla? Probably not. And also, does anyone remember? Probably not at the same time. And like equally, if I say Nidzilla to a new player, they instantly know what you mean, pretty much, right? They know it's big monsters because it's just Tyranids and Godzilla. It's not particularly hard to work out. Whereas if I were to call it like the X player list, it's not going to resonate. So I think my entire thing has always been, I've said this on a few other podcasts as well, is just trying to make the hobby as accessible as physically possible for people, right? The entire reason why I still play 40K
that's needed given how inaccessible it is. Like you kind of it's really up to the players that play it to make it accessible, because I feel like if you were a random person that walked in and wanted, without any friends in the hobby, or anyone like that could actually show you to pick up the game, it would be it's not impossible. And I mean, that's a topic I'm sure we could wax poetic about for a whole episode.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's one of the reasons why I've got like an issue with the Nidzilla thing, not because of the rules necessarily, but because I don't want to see rules in my White Dwarfs. I was also against Forge World in the WTC.
Yeah.
Now it's in there, it's fine. I mean, because it's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue for me are the campaign books. But at the same time, if I can avoid sticking more rules into this competitive system, which I want as many people to be able to participate in as possible, I'm for it. I am for like a rules cutoff, to be honest. Like codexes, boom. Maybe Forge World, to be honest. Yeah, absolutely fine. But
yeah, we'll kind of touch on that, because I'm gonna touch quickly on the article at some point that Game Division actually put out, rather than me just making up what I think that they said. But a big part of their the perks apparently are going to be not quite clear what exactly they mean by it, because it's very vague. I think
as usual,
I think the terminology is what are the okay, and we'll bring it up in a sec, but rules entitlements, I think, is the terminology that they use, which I have no earthly idea what a rules entitlement is, to be honest, and they don't really explain it very well. So we'll definitely kind of review
this, because I'm looking at the Warhammer of the ITC article on Warhammer Community. I can't see the rules entitlement thing.
So so we'll get into it in a sec. But before we do,
there it is. Yeah.
I guess just quickly, we just had the largest singles 40k event. Maybe not. I think the largest singles 40k event in the world LVO this weekend. Just quickly, what are your thoughts on the overall? How the event finished, and any surprises?
It could be the biggest event. I think there's one in Spain.
Yeah, I was gonna say there might be one in Spain that's slightly larger. Yeah. But anyways, it's one of the largest.
Yeah, it's one of the largest.
The most prestigious singles event, I'd say, because I think the one in Spain, although it might be more players, it's not as like
probably is at this point.
Well known.
It probably is. I probably would agree with you. It's the most prestigious at this point. I was keeping tabs on it because we had a couple of UK guys over. We had Malik went over, and Manny were our main contenders. Obviously, Boxy went over as well. He won Best Renaissance by drawing round 1 and then winning 5 games.
Who's that? Steven. Yeah, I saw that. I sent him congratulations on that, because I was like, he's
a good lad.
That's my award.
Yeah, and he's been doing a lot of good stuff recently as well. Like I think what he's doing with the get fit for 40K stuff is fantastic. I think
Yeah.
that really fits into a niche that specifically he can provide, where it's his thing, right? Like he is absolutely the expert on that. I think it's a really really good call, and yeah, he's doing some great work with that, and he's a good lad as well. We had David Gaylard over as well. He made top eight. I think. I don't think there are any real shocks to me because obviously the one people are always going to jump to is saying, "Oh, John Lennon lost round one," right? Now I've got opinions on the reaction to that, or the lack thereof, but that wasn't a surprise to me because I didn't think Custodes beat Crusher
Yeah.
at all. I thought Crusher smashed them because the Custodes just bounce off and then they die. They don't tend to do anything to the Crusher Stampede. Obviously, John disagreed because otherwise I don't see him running that list, knowing there's going to be a lot of Crusher Stampede there if he thinks that he loses to it, right?
Or if he thinks that none of the players that he's like, I wasn't super familiar with the player that beat him and I think I think that is a big part of the shock, and I think it ties into our larger conversation we're going to have today.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at the top 8 at the LVO, when you look at who, obviously there were some surprises, but there was a lot of unknowns there, and when we talk about the ITC and the kind of rankings and what they mean, I think what we're going to learn as we kind of have this conversation is they don't really mean a lot, because in the end, like they didn't mean as much as we thought. Like the lot of the top ITC players didn't make it into the top 8. And in fact, some of the players that did had barely any events played at all, and no one had ever heard of them. Like our local Canadian hero, Alex McDougall, who had 2 events this season in his entire ITC season, and one was like a 30-person GT that like we literally threw together in a weekend, and he like he made top 4. So it's like and I think that's a bigger story as well, like the fact that there's really good players out there that aren't involved or playing the ITC at all, and I'm sure we'll get into that more.
I mean, when we talk about that, people can always say, if I make that point, oh, well, you're not high in the ITC, like, you're just saying that because you're Solly. And I'm like, well, first of all, I have 3 events. Second of all, like, because you're making that point, it validates it a lot more for those people. Because you were top of the ITC at one point, and therefore you understand, like, it's not like you were in a position where you would benefit from saying, yeah, it means a lot, right?
Yeah.
But
and
obviously, no. Yeah.
For those of you following at home, I also lost my first game at the LVO the year that I was top of the ITC.
You won the LVO?
Yeah. So I ended up going like I think 5-1. I won all my other games, and the person I lost to was like ended up going to I think the top 10 or top 8. So it wasn't like I just lost like randomly. I was out of practice. There's lots of million reasons I lost, but at the end of the day, like sometimes you get Brad Chester in the first round or Tron Nade in the first round, and it is what it is. Like it's the luck of the draw, and sometimes you gotta play those 100%. Games. So
100%. And like with the John thing, I think they had the guy on who beat him on the Art of War a couple of weeks before because he had won a GT with it. Now, that in and of itself doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it gives an indication, which is a lot of what ITC does. It just gives you an indication because you see the result, you see the final score, you don't see the matchups that took place to get there, right? And the indication obviously is that maybe he's competent with that list, and then he beat John with it, which I think is a favourable matchup for the Crusher Stampede. But the point I wanted to make with this is that I want to contrast the reaction to John losing round 1 with Manny losing in the final to Richard.
Right.
Now, when Manny lost
in the GW
Open.
Oh, the GW Open.
No,
sorry, got it.
The GW Open a couple of months ago. So Manny got to the final of the GW Open with his Hive Guard Nids, right? And when he went first, I was in a group and we said, yeah, Manny's won this game. And then Manny spectacularly threw the game by doing something he didn't need to do, and then the dice fucked him on it, right? But it's not like he could, at the end of the game, he said, oh, the dice like ruined me. It's like, yeah, but you put yourself in a position for the dice to ruin you. You didn't need to do this thing where you overextended and then got, like, because if you fail to kill all this stuff, you just lose. Whereas you just don't even need to take the risk at all. You took the risk and it punished you, right? And it is what it is. And for the next few days or so, the internet was aflame calling Manny just a guy who relies on extreme lists and not a very good player, right? As someone who's played Manny a lot, I can't agree with that. Like,
of course.
Manny's got a unique play style, but at the same time, everyone was battering him. Like, they didn't understand why he'd lost. They were just calling him mediocre, and from the evidence, you can just say, yeah, like Manny made a mistake. Now, what Manny's done since is he's taken some steps to rectify that, and I'm sure we can talk about that in a bit. But when John loses round 1 and no one says anything, it's not because they understand the context. But like we've already been through the context of why John lost that game. It's perfectly reasonable that he lost that game. But it was also perfectly reasonable that Manny lost that game. And if you can quantify why Manny lost that and talk about and explain exactly why that happened, then like you can explain one thing, but you can't explain the other. Why not?
Yeah,
John
I mean,
also
look,
came out and said
I
that
remember
screwed
exactly what game you're talking about between Manny and Richard.
I can actually talk about the specific one. So Manny was playing into Richard's Fixed City, and Richard had the relic that allows you to treat your power from pain as 1 round plus, right? But playing on stream, Manny goes for it's a direct assault game. Manny goes for it turn 1, pushes all his devil gaunts up, tries to absolutely alpha the crap out of Richard, rather than just screening out and fanning him and relying on his hive guard because he had 18 hive guard to shoot Richard off the board. But instead, he runs at him, doesn't kill enough. Richard turns around, Animus Vitaes the Devil Gaunts, and then charges Manny's army and tags him and wins the game. Right? Like, Manny didn't need to screen out, but he did. Well, he didn't need to go so aggro, but he did, right? And then everyone was just saying, oh, Manny just sucks. It's like, no, it's not true. He just made a mistake. And, you know.
Yeah, I remember watching that game, and I think I mean, you know, like, I've met Manny a few times. He's like super nice, one of the nicest guys I've ever met, as far as like just such great energy and such a like positive dude. I think there, and this is just my personal opinion, and I could be wrong here. I think there is 2 things that work against Manny. First, he's from the UK, not the US. So, and the majority of
not false.
Huh? And no, and I'm just being realistic. You know, especially the US, like Reddit, Facebook, competitive 40K crowd. They love to, you know, the majority of them are probably from North America. And so just Manny being the other, there's this tendency to
being the tea drinker that he is,
like, you know, he's drinking his crumpets and watching, you know, reruns of like The Crown, right? Like they have this like impression of him that is, you know, he's the other, and you know, I don't think it's like a racial thing, but it is like a a nationalist thing, right? Where it's like we love our country, whatever. And the other thing is, look,
I do the same thing, like
exactly. But the other thing is, and here's the thing,
seriously,
the thing is, you know, Manny has a tendency to take extremely skew lists, and I think sometimes what that does is it masks his ability, because when he does have a game like the one he did against Richard. Like it's very easy for people to dismiss his wins as just wins due to some skew list, and then his losses, anytime he loses, if he makes a single mistake, it's like, oh, because he's a horrible player, right? And I don't, you know, I know Manny's an incredibly strong player, and he's done incredibly well for himself, and I think people need to have that perspective. The other thing specifically in this situation, the specific one you're talking about, look, the game against Manny was a finals game. It was streamed. It was like, you know, there's a lot of eyes on that game. John lost the first game out of 400 games in an event where, like,
but
like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there just wasn't the level of like eyes. There's so many other storylines happening at LVO, where it's like Richard showing up at the 11th hour, all these other, there's like so many other things that people were talking about. I think that, like, and I'm not here to apologize for John. Full disclosure, I'm friends with John and Richard, but like the thing is, like, I think in a lot of ways John kind of got away with losing because there were so many other things happening. People just had there's too many threads to talk about as far as, like, you know, why he lost, right?
I just want to be clear very quickly. This isn't me saying, oh, well, Manny got shit, John should get the same shit. This is me saying John's loss was perfectly acceptable. I think neither of them should get shit. I think if Manny's going to get shit, give him shit for making the stupid mistake. And not like saying, oh yeah, he's just crap overall. Come on, man. Like that WTC team that England put out that won the WTC. I could talk about this a little bit. So the way that they were pairing was they had 3 players who they were specifically designing great matchups for, and saying, right, we're going to get these 3 players in the best matchups we possibly can, and they're going to get 20s. And we know they're going to get 20 nils every single time, right? Because those are our 3 best players. So this was a team with Josh Roberts on it, Tony Chu on it, Nick Nanavati on it, Manny Chima on it, Matt Robertson on it, James Ramsey on it. This team is stacked, man. This team was insane. They literally yoinked the 2 best players from Wales, put them on England, yoinked Nick from the US, put them on England. This was a super team if you've ever seen one, right? And Manny was one of the 3 players they were relying on to get max points. If that's not an endorsement of Manny, I don't know what is,
Yeah.
man.
And again, as I said, like,
know.
I think me and you both agree that we think Manny's a great player, and
Yeah,
I think he gets a lot of like shit that's undeserved. But I think
I don't think he helps himself with how intense he is. Quite intense sometimes.
Yeah.
He really wants to win, and I don't think like obviously we had a couple of things last year with like the Hellstorm event where the whole submarine meme was born, and the London GT thing with the clocks, and he is not the fastest player in the world. And so when I saw he was taking the 180 rack list that I'd been seeing on Tabletop Simulator for the last like 6 months, I was like, Manny's biggest enemy here is just the clock.
I just feel bad for his David, his poor painter, who has to put these lists together in like 3 days time. Like as a painter myself, I shed and I weep internally for him. I'm like, man, this guy, I hope he's really paying him a lot of money, because the kind of shit he puts him through, I'm just like, oh my god.
I've promised those guys, well, I've been promising those guys for months that I'll come down and do a day of recording with them, and I'm just going to throw a Gene Steel Occult army at David and have him roll with it in the corner.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, get this done. Yeah. This is my payment. It's sorted.
All right, so with that said, let's get on to the kind of meat of the issue. So, Tom, you're someone that, and I think one of the you mentioned it earlier, but I kind of have a unique position of agreeing with a lot of you say, even though I've been at a high rank in ITC, because I think what it taught me the most being high ranked in the ITC is that high ranking actually means nothing, in my opinion. Or it doesn't mean nothing, but it doesn't correlate necessarily to player skill 1-to-1. Like there's definitely some, obviously 100%. If you're winning events, you have to be somewhat competent, you have to be good at the game at some level. But when it's not a good measure of player versus player skill. And I had a whole episode on ELO ratings and ITC rankings and how the actual rankings
that was with Val, right?
should work. No, it was with I believe Eric.
I know it was
who's
Eric from the 11th Company.
Yeah, from my old co-host of the Exterminators podcast. So go check that guys out if you guys want to understand a bit more of the data side and why I think it's not an issue. But I'd love to hear your kind of unique perspective on the ITC in general, and then hopefully your idea of what I'd love to hear what you think the ideal ranking system should be, because for me the ITC is a very very narrow measure, I guess. It measures certain things and it ranks things in a certain way. So I'd just love to hear your unique perspective on kind of the ITC and the rankings in general, and kind of why you look at it the way you do, because I know you have a very unique perspective.
So I've got a question for you actually after this, because I think we can go on a good tangent with that, specifically about ITC. ITC at most for me is an indicator of how someone's doing, but I don't think it's a particularly important one. So I brought up Team Wales a minute ago. I'm the vice captain of Team Wales, right? We just picked our team a couple of months ago, and when we have an applicant on the team, it basically goes through me. I get a yes or no. I can veto any player I want, and I can vouch for any player I want. And although it may not be, entirely yes, we're definitely going for this player, it's heavily considered. Okay. And I've got people involved via that, and I've given my endorsement, said, yes, pick this guy, or no, don't take this guy, right? Or I want this guy in this specific role, and I've created entirely new roles for them. I do not look at the ITC rankings at all when I consider who I want to pick. And it's kind of like putting together a League of Legends team based on who the top 5 people are on solo queue ladder, right? It doesn't necessarily, because at a certain point you've got a certain level of skill, and then it's all about understanding and what have you, right? And how matters work, right? So I value the eye test far more importantly, because if I look at someone's ITC profile, I could see 5 GT wins, right? I could see that, and I see 5 different factions. Well, I don't know what matchups got played. I don't know who this guy played in there. And I was saying this to you off air before we started. I was rooting for Alex McDougall to win the LVO towards the end, because he got some rough matchups, man. He got some rough matchups throughout that tournament, and he still won them, right? And so often with these big events, I think the best example I can have is when I played London GT in 2018. That was the one in West Ham Stadium with all the drama. That was hilarious.
Styrofoam City.
Yeah, mate. I had to. It was Styrofoam City. No one ever talks about Fire Hazard City underneath and how you had to escape the hot box by winning all your games.
Hey, at least the tables were the right orientation.
They were, but no one could move. So I played my first round, and I was kind of in like this little cubby hole with Neil Powell and Mike Brandt, just kind of like all hugged up together with these tables, starting 2 hours late. But I played that event, and because there wasn't like a top 8 or anything like that, I came third without having to play like anyone who I'd consider like a top tier player, right? I didn't, because that's just how the nature of the pairings. You see that, and that's the same value as someone who's hit like 5 top players the entire way through. Right? Like, I look at poor Brad Chester at the LVO this weekend, right? That poor bastard had some horrific matchups, dude. Like, if he'd won all 5 of those, are you telling me that's the same value as someone else who's lower than someone who hit like 5 shitters and he's won all his games? Right? It's not, is it?
Yeah, he had a pretty tough go.
Yeah, exactly. You can't understand like the nuance behind it, right? So I can see someone's won 5 games in a row all I want. It doesn't mean as much as seeing them play on the tabletop. Like we do that through practice weekends. We do like Team Wales events. We do little team events in the UK. And in the UK, it's a little bit easier for us because we're so kind of local that you can actually see how everyone's playing. So I don't really rate the ITC in terms of like an objective ranking system, just because I know, and you know fully well as well, that it's a game inside a game. It's about how you can squeeze points out of the best scenarios. So, and that a lot of that is because it's not scaled off of quality of field. It's scaled off size, and often size is completely inversely proportional to the quality of the field.
Right.
So let's say I have a big event, right, and I'm holding a big event in the UK. And let's say in the UK, there are about 40 or 50 like really good players, okay? Well, at a certain point, if I've got like 200 people there, I'm going to get every top UK player that is going to be able to come, right? If I expand that to 500 players, how many more top players am I getting?
None.
1, 2,
maybe
0 probably, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter, right? So I know, okay, let's work out rounds. 500 players. Round 1, I play 1 out of 500. And there are 40, 50 players I'm worried about. Okay. Round 2, I play 1 of 250 players. Still not worried. Round 3, I play 1 of 125 players. Still not worried. Round 4, I play 1 out of whatever the fuck. I can't remember the maths. It's far too late.
60
for me,
players.
but you get the point. Yeah, exactly. So there is a good chance that I'm just not gonna. Like, I don't go to the massive events because I don't. When I go to events, I go there to see my mates and to practice. Right. If I'm playing in a hall of just throw my pen on the floor. But when I play in a field of like 500 people, I'm not going to get great practice, and that's not to disrespect everybody else in the hall, right? Like it is disrespectful. I'm not, but at the same time, I want to play the best players I can because as a competitive player, I think one of the things that I really find is that if I ever place my self-worth on what other people think of me, which I think a lot the ITC does a lot, it's bad for me, right? It always is going to be. So my mindset is always, I'm not competing with other people. I'm competing with myself, right? I want to be the best player that I can be, and so long as I can do that, it doesn't matter. Like, if I've reached 100% Tom Leighton max fucking power, and I'm, like, good enough for top 5%, okay, well, maybe I wasn't cut out for this game, right? But I'm still going to enjoy myself, and I'm still going to do the best I can.
Yeah, and
right?
I actually have, like, a very personal story specifically with that, which is, you know, I don't like ever like talk about it a lot because it's not really relevant, but like like that the 2019 ITC season, I was very much in that position where
I was going to ask you about that.
I had a very strong first half of the season, and then I got really busy with work. I opened a restaurant at and I basically didn't play for 3-4 months. The meta changed quite a bit with this new Space Marines. So the list that I'd been playing all year kind of got shifted out of the meta. Orcs became a thing. Ynnari were a thing. Like there's a lot of changes to the game. And then by the time I kind of got back into it, you know,
It's a pretty
Possessed,
different
Chaos
game with those
Possessed was
campaign books,
the
dude. Yeah.
Chaos Possessed was the list, and then I also
Yeah.
one of the other things too, and this is, you know, you can go look at my lists. I stopped playing the list that I had been good at. So in some events after August, I started playing. I wanted to play with like the triple Lord Discordant list with like knights and like just a fun list
Yeah.
with like very few models. I played that list a few events. I played the Possessed list a few events because I didn't need to win games. And guess what happened? Having no practice, having not as much, I did well with those lists, but not as well as I was doing with like my top meta list because I was playing a fun list. And what the unique, the very like loud like thing was like, oh, what happened to Jim Vessel? He lost his touch. Going into the LVO, I was playing a Possessed list. I think I had one practice game with. I'd never played the Possessed list, but that was the only list, Chaos list at the time that was viable.
How much pressure must that have put on you?
And
to,
it was a lot of pressure.
Win all your games because people think you're the best player in the world. Like,
People kept saying, you know, kept like hyping, and I'm like, look, guys, I know how good I am. I'm not, and I would never have said, if you'd asked me at any point in that season, whether I'm the best player in the world or even in the top 50 best players, I would have said no. I would have told you straight up no. What I would have said is I was good within the tournaments that I played really well and I won them. And thanks to the beauty of the way the ITC ranking system works, I'm at the top of the rankings, right? But as far as like my ability, even within North America, I didn't think I was like top 20, top 30. Like I knew that, right? But people look at the
ITC. You probably were at one point. I think you were top 20. Like, I watched your game versus. I watched you.
There was definitely like moments where like
dude.
Sorry.
I watched you punish the shit out of Eric at the Capital City Bloodbath.
Yeah, there's definitely like definitely games where like I felt like there's probably like a month span there, especially like my Adepticon win. That was probably like peak like gym brain where like I really felt like I'd hit my stride with everything. And I played some really tough games in that event that I felt like really pushed me as a player. But like, anyways, I had no thing where I was so good, but there's so much pressure and so many people were saying, okay, how's Jim gonna do? And you know, I would bring my meme list, my Discordant Knight list with like my Chaos Knight, and it was just because I had painted those models and I really wanted to play with them, and it was fun, and it was like quick after playing, you know, the Plague Bear list for 6 months. It was a huge relief to play this like fun. It was I think it was 13 model list. And I lost some games and people were like, oh my god, what happened? Like I was like, look guys, like you're gonna lose games, but I had fun. But like, to your point, that really got to me, and I had to learn that I had to learn really hard that like I need to not care about what other people think of me, because you know, people would start, even to this day, people still kind of throw my name around in like, but it's always like in a kind of like a like, look how the mighty had fallen kind of, you know, reference. I'm like, I had to really like disconnect myself. As like my self-worth and my ability as a player have nothing to do with like this season. You know how many ITC events I have? One. Because that's all I've been in one event. So like, am I still a good player? Probably not. Like
I'm trying hard.
I'm half decent, but I went to one event this year, right? And like I have like one event score, right? And I lost. We was a team tournament, and I think I lost 4 out of my 5 games. Like, you know what I'm saying?
I mean, you went under the bus. That's all that happened. Okay?
We still finished like 4th overall.
You sacrificed yourself of a team. Yeah,
we still finished 4th overall as a team. So I captained the team. I captained to the team to a good finish, but like, yeah, I lost. I remember losing my first 4 games, and I was like, what happened? Like, what happened to you? Thinking to yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those, right? Like, I actually kind of feel sorry for the guys that do the coaching services. Because imagine how much pressure you must be under every time to just do really well. As in, like, 4-1 bare minimum at every single event you do, right? Now, 4-1 isn't like the hardest thing in the world, but it's just, you can never just experiment. So I look at, like, Manny over at, obviously, Glasshammer. I look at Boxy doing his stuff. I look at the Art of War guys as well. Like, I mean, there's a reason that you'll see them like selectively pick events, because they need to make sure they're properly prepped for every event they go to, because they know that they need to do super well because people are like watching, and they're using it as like some kind of weird argument from authority, which is totally fine. Like, people can think whatever the fuck they think of me. I know for a fact that I can get on like most teams that I fucking want, and every year there's a WTC spot for me. It doesn't fucking matter if I just take 2 stompers to a tournament, go 2 and 3 for the memes, and then like it doesn't make me shit that I suddenly took 2 stompers to an event, right? Because people can understand context. And to be honest, like, what the masses think doesn't really matter because they
Yeah.
don't understand what's happening anyway, which is a great example as we've seen with the Manny and John stuff, right? I mean, people couldn't understand why Manny lost that game. They couldn't work it out. And therefore, it's like, well, why do I care whether you think I'm a good player or not? You don't even fucking know what a good player looks like.
Yeah, I'd agree. So, what do you think? Like, putting the ITC aside, how important do you like? And it's something that is important to me, both as a motivational tool and as a like part of the hobby, I guess, in a sense. So, like, I think about people that play like, say they have like ladder rankings in League of Legends or achievements
Yeah,
on Xbox or whatever
yeah.
else, or like any sort of standings. Like for me, the idea of like having a ranking system or a way to see how you're doing overall, I actually
Yeah,
think that's a really positive thing. And I think for
I think it's
for especially in a
fantastic. Yeah.
competitive, any sort of competitive scene, an ability to see test yourself against other players, or at least see
Mm.
how you stand against other players. So what do you think that could look like moving forward? Let's
Well,
putting the ITC
well,
aside, like, do you think we should have a system like that? And how do you think that system could look in a way that A actually feels like it's meaningful, but B
mhm.
isn't designed in a way that people are gaming it? And
Mhm.
I know there's probably a very hard answer to that, but I'm just your thoughts in general on like that kind of ranking system in that sense.
So first of all, what do you want? The question initially is, what do you want the ITC to be? I think the ITC, as it stands, is a fantastic tool for encouraging people to go to 40K events,
Right.
and I'm a big fan of it. Just because it's not for me, and I don't value it from like a personal rankings perspective, and I don't use it to like inform my decision when I'm like selecting players or highlighting people to try and like pick up Team Wales, doesn't mean but I think that it's a bad thing. I think it's a fantastic thing. I think it's really, really good for encouraging people to get involved with the hobby. The question is, do you want it to be a serious ranking system that people value? I personally don't, because I don't think it matters that much, just
Right.
personally. But if you do, that's a different question. I think that let's for the sake of argument say that I wanted it to be a serious ranking system where I could actually look at it and say, oh, this person's really good. Um, I think it's incredibly hard to do in a game like 40K. Now you could say like elo rankings are a fantastic way to do that because it bases it off like the skill of the player,
Right.
right? Like, oh, if you beat like a really high skill player, then it's a lot of points. But at the same time, matchups aren't considered. Like, I've forgotten the name of the fella that beat John, but he'd get loads of points for beating John, right?
Yeah.
Loads. But the matchup was favorable, right?
Right.
So if John had won that game into an unfavorable matchup, he wouldn't have got many like rankings points on the elo ladder. But
Yeah.
the other guy does for winning a matchup. He should be winning in a perfect scenario anyway, right? So it's one of those where it's very difficult to do. The only example I can think that's really similar is Hearthstone, right? Um, but even then, it's like it's just matching players off similar ability and not giving you extra rewards for doing stuff. And the point of Hearthstone isn't to necessarily say, "Oh, this is a fantastic ranking system." It's to encourage the grind because you know you're going to hit certain matchups, and you know you're going to hit certain matchups at different relos as well. Like I could, for example, be playing like rank 15, 16, and know at like the middle of the month, and know I'm going to be hitting Face Hunter every day. And so I build a deck to beat Face Hunter, and I go up 4 ranks, and then suddenly I'm not hitting Face Hunter, and I need to change, right? So it's a really difficult thing to do because there are so many variables.
Right.
I did listen to the Elo talk. I can't remember like most of the points, but I will go back and watch it again. Although I would refer other people to that because I thought it was quite good. I think there are smarter people than me for working this out, but I think Elo has to be included, but equally potentially balanced out with stats on win percentages as well with certain matches. But even then, you get into different builds. Like you look at the Drakari book, how many different Drakari builds have we seen over the last
Right.
year, man? How many different builds? We started with Dark Technomancers, then we moved on to like Raiders with shit in it, right, constantly. Then we moved on to Fixed Cities. Now we're moving on to Fin Cities.
Now we'll turn
It's we
into
got
adding Harlequins into the mix.
we've had 4 builds, and the
Yeah.
book came out in April, 10
Right.
months ago, right?
I
I think it
think
was April. Yeah.
I agree with you. I think I guess in given that it's 2022 and that we have access to smartphones, things like Warhammer
Hmm.
app now, obviously, which take it or leave it, which I could leave it. But I guess what I would propose, and this is where maybe maybe I'm being like a bit naive and kind of optimistic. I would love it if, like, you know, and I know that the problem is because Games Workshop has never really been invested in this kind of like data collection. But I would really love it is if something like, say they use the ITC as a starting point, but eventually they grow it to all Warhammer games across the world. I would love it if the app, for instance, had scorekeeping functionality, right? Where you could log in with your username, you put your opponent's username in, and you put in your army. Maybe it doesn't have, maybe upload your lists there. There's like through the Warhammer app or whatever, right? And then it tracks things like your win rate versus factions, your win rate versus other players, your win rate. Like you're going to be able to pull out of that data tons of metrics. And so that when I go to say, and my dream would be I could go to like the Warhammer Games Workshop site, right? Warhammer rankings, 40K. And I could look up any player based on wins with a faction, wins versus a faction, what lists they played, what events they won, what are their win percentage when going first, when going second. So what secondaries they take, what secondaries, like, you know, like there's a ton of data that we could be mined there, and then presented in a way that I think you could rank and say, okay, I want to see who the highest winning Dark Angels player is. So I could look that up. Or I could just put the most winningest player. And I know the guys at Down Under Pairings have done a lot of that stuff in the past. And they're like, who had the most like raw wins, best win percentage, wins with a certain faction, wins against players in the top 50, whatever you got. You know, I mean, you can come up with 1,000 different of these kind of like requirements. So in my perfect world, we could have that where you have all the data kind of compiled into one spot, especially like at that game level. And then we could basically have a portal run by Games Workshop that is essentially the guys that run the game. It's their game, that where we could access that data and have player profiles and have all sorts of that kind of stuff. Like that for me would be like the kind of, you know, the goal. And I'm hoping, and I don't know if you think that this is going to ever happen, I'm hoping that, you know, maybe with the ITC they're dipping their toe in the water a little bit, but I'm hoping that what this means is they're becoming more open to at least tracking competitive gaming and rewarding competitive gaming in some way, which might lead to them developing better systems to rank that stuff. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Although that said, they didn't cover the LVO, did they?
Well, I think that's a separate reason, and I think partly that has to do with the fact that they're doing their own events, and that they are trying to now keep a separation between GW events on the channel and non-GW events. I think because of the fact that So I don't agree with it. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a bad idea, but I think there's maybe something else going on there beyond the beyond that. Anyways, that's a separate point. But
it would be interesting to work out what exactly the relationship between FLG and GW is, right? Because obviously the ITC moving over, and obviously the ITC was renamed the International Tournament Circuit, and taking out the word independent about a year ago.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I didn't even notice that they did that.
They did. I think we reported on the Honest Wargamer, and then we got
called liars. I forgot about that. I noticed exactly in the article the Game Workshop article said International Tournament Circuit.
So I mean, it is interesting that, you know. Anyway, that's a story for another time about discrediting people who you know are right, but never mind. That's okay. We roll with those. We roll with those. I completely forgot what the original question was now, Jim.
My question was, so I kind of was proposing like my data-driven
I remember,
player ranking, like. And where, obviously, I think that the thing is, and I think you mentioned this, the ITC measures one very thin like data point. Yeah. And I'd love it if we incorporated all the data that we get from Games Workshop, like for playing games, especially in competitive settings. Like obviously, maybe you can record your home games if you want, but any tournament that's basically gets all their games recorded and all that information gets put in. And then we could have like a variety of metrics to measure by. So there isn't necessarily a best player, but there is a best player within a certain criteria. So it's like best Drukhari player, that you know, like versus whatever, or best Dark Angels player, or best like, you know, you can look at certain lists, and I think Privateer Press.
You could even say I am the best Tau player at beating other Tau in the world.
Yeah, and I think even like I didn't ever really get into the Privateer Press War Machine tournament circuit, but I do remember being able to go to their site. I think it was Privateer Press, or maybe there was like some sister sites where you could literally one click buy winning army lists. Like they would have like, here's the list that just won this event,
this point before,
and you could like one click, and it would give you the full model list. and then you could like one click buy it. Like it had those kinds of things, right?
Hmm.
So something
Yeah.
like that, I think, where it's integrated, fully integrated within, say, even the GW web store or anything like that. I think that is something that, yeah, I think On Call GM kind of calls it out. I remember seeing it. I know it's from War Machine, but I think that's something that I think Games Workshop could actually do, and maybe leveraging the Warhammer app again. Again, integrating with, the problem is, and actually the funniest thing about this announcement, secondly, is this is my favorite part. The headline, this is the line from the thing. It's the headline for now. Taking part in official Warhammer events will earn you ITC points. It's like, yeah, that's been the case since like for 8 months since the first GWGT. You get ITC points.
Not for the UK ones.
Yeah, I
Not
know,
for the
but like
UK
I think
ones.
this is like all the US Opens is what I'm saying. You already earn ITC points.
That's NA centricity again. Okay.
No,
fair
but my
enough,
point
that's
is
fine.
like
I
they
know,
make
I
it
know,
sound
I'm
like
just
this is a
you,
thing
bro.
that's never happened. Is all my point is, right?
Oh yeah, it's just a classic spin.
Do
But,
they have now? Here's a question
the
though,
app
Tom.
stuff,
Do they have
Hmm?
Warhammer events outside of the Warhammer world in the UK right now? Because I don't, as far as I know, I didn't think they did.
I've got a story about this actually. First of all, with the app thing, let's start with getting the points on there first. It's been a couple of weeks now.
Baby steps.
Let's do that. I mean, obviously, yeah, exactly. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. That'd be a cool idea, but it'll take someone who's far smarter than me to work out how you'd actually do that. So I can't really comment. We don't really have on the GW events. Like, I don't believe we have any official ones that are outside of Warhammer World.
Which is a
We
shame.
do have affiliated ones.
Yeah.
So the famous example being the Shitstorm London GT,
Yeah.
that was an affiliated event, and since has not been affiliated. The other example is Blood and Glory. Now that was an affiliated event. Now, I've got a story about this. So in 2017, it was won by a guy called Blackie. That's his name. He won that event, and they did an article on Warhammer Community, or the GW website as it was called.
We guess who's a playtester.
No, he's not a playtester. It's saying all the winners of all the big events, and here is the winner of the 40k event. It's Mark Edwards. There you go. Look at him. He's won the event. 2019, it was won by a player. I don't know if you know him. He's called Manny Chima. He won that event. 2019, they did an article of all the players, who've won all the events, and here's Manny and his trophy. In 2018, the 40k event was won by a guy called Tom Leighton, and they did an article, and they did all of the winners, apart from one very notable exception who happens to appear as a co-host on the Honest Wargamer Spy Center on Thursday night.
Oh no!
Who was not at all put on there. So the only thing that could maybe entice me to get involved with the ITC is having to force them to acknowledge my presence. That maybe might do it. Okay.
You don't think they have a personal vendetta against you, though, do they?
No, I know they do.
Well, what have you? But like, I can see like why like just because of your work on the Honest Wargamer, that seems like a bit.
Oh,
petty.
mate, it does, doesn't it?
Like I can see that. Like I know they hate Rob for sure, but like it would seem weird that like you get caught up in that crossfire, you know?
Let's put that to the test and let's see, shall we?
We'll see.
Maybe I'll
Well,
go to some of these
I think
big events, and maybe I'll learn Gene Stealer cults and abuse new players who don't know what they do for fun and points. That would be funny.
And Proximity in chat makes a point. He says, they have something against Tom, but he gets hit by toxicity by association. Here's what I will say as someone who's like obviously a huge fan of you guys and obviously knows Rob as well. I actually think, and this is my personal opinion, that the honest like the audience that you guys curate is more engaged in the hobby because they have a voice that is theirs, that in the hobby space, that if they were in a position where the only people that were proselytizing 40k stuff were those like, Ben Curry, like rah rah rah, like super like positive all the time, like GW can do no wrong voices. If that's all, if those people that love the hobby in a lot of ways, don't like Games Workshop in a lot of ways, if they don't have someone that is like there with them and like speaking their voice, I actually think there's less people. I think you actually lose customers. Like one of the things that I think Rob does really well is he's like a voice for all those people that are in that space of like, love the hobby, love like the games, whatever, but think Games Workshop obviously has some pretty like like bad practices and stuff, and he's able to kind of thread that needle and kind of keep us all excited about the hobby, but also like feel like we have a community of people that are like us. And because a lot of times when you have those opinions online, you get drowned out by the like even my Twitter field is full of people that were getting, this was the take after the chapter proved 40k players complain that the rules aren't up to date or aren't balanced, and then 40k players get mad when you put out chapter proved, which is like literally the worst take ever. Like that's not the point. But and then a lot of people are like that, right? Like you get a lot of like that echo chamber. So I would actually argue that he actually plays an important part of the community because he keeps a certain segment of it like energized to stay in the hobby.
Oh yeah, 100% he does. Yeah, like I mean, I just need to clarify as well. Like I don't actually really care all that much. I just think it's funny. And to be honest, as multinational corporations go, there are far worse than Games Workshop. I don't hear about ridiculous stories of GW like exploiting, you know, all sorts of horrific resources. I don't see them
until they start making plastics in Bangladesh or something like that.
But not Ben and Jerry's out. Like, you want to see some shit? Actually, just go and like research what Ben and Jerry's are up to, right?
Exactly.
Like for all the proselytizing, it's fucking disgusting, to be honest, dude. But not Apple, you know. There's all these companies.
I remember growing up in I grew up in Canada, but I remember we watched this documentary on the shoe factories that Nike has in, I think it was like Bangladesh or in India, and like I remember thinking like Nike is the most evil company in the world growing up, right? You know, and there's all these huge national corporations. One thing I will say for Games Workshop, for the most part, outside of like the books they get from China, everything is produced in the UK. Like as a how they treat their workers is actually really good for the most part compared to say like Nike that employs sweatshops and all these fast fashion brands, which no one blinks an eye on.
In Games Workshop, or like you have proper career progression within Games Workshop to a fault.
Right.
To be honest.
Like I might not agree with their business practices, but they're definitely a lot more ethical than a lot of companies out there.
100%. That doesn't mean that like we can't criticize them for the things that we think they're doing wrong, though. But at the same time, like I've got no like personal beef. I just think that's kind of funny.
Okay.
You know.
So I want to get into this article a little bit, and I'm just going to throw it up on screen. Hopefully this works because I'm very bad at technology. Let's just see here. All right.
What would it? Are you bringing up the article?
Yeah, I'm just going to bring up the article just so that people can see. Okay, so I'm just going to... Here we go.
Let me just get this on my first monitor so I can actually see. I'm just kind of looking at the camera for it. It's fine.
Okay, guys, I'm just gonna pull it up. Let's see here. Okay, so go. All right, so Warhammer on ITC. So I'm just gonna go through it, guys, really quick. So one of the things that they talk about is obviously there's the kind of, as I said, you know, obviously I know they have Warhammer World events, but they haven't had, and I think one of the things that actually was bizarre for me when they announced all these US Opens was they are not having like a London, like a UK based Games Workshop Open. That seems really like crazy to me. That seemed really crazy to me, but hopefully this means that they will. One of the things, and I think this is a positive, is like they will there'll be a host of new event types. So they announce a host of new event types, which I think is a positive thing. And formats on offer. So I do think that, and this is kind of where I think Games Workshop is, you know, ITC I think is influencing Games Workshop in a lot of ways, but I think Games Workshop is kind of trying to influence ITC in a lot of ways. And this is where that kind of narrative of, okay, how much Games Workshop is going to influence ITC and what are the broader implications for the hobby are. So one of the things is that there's going to be new event types. And then there's going to be amping up rewards and recognition for the hobby track, which both things I think are great. And I hope that is like actually happens. So what are your thoughts on those?
Okay, well, let's go through these point by point. So the first one, every participant in the ITC tournament or event will have a chance to win an invitation to a special annual event. So we're going to do an invitational. Okay, I think that's kind of cool. I want to see them broadcast that and do a great job with it. I think that's really cool. I like it. There'll be a host of new event types for what's on offer. I need to see more about those. I hope it's not just the invitational thing. There'll always be awards, events and awards that recognize your skills and achievements. The irony being that official Games Workshop events Pride support has always just been a trophy and nothing else. That's kind of a meme, but maybe they step that up a bit.
I actually to push back on that. I think in like 2004, like way back, I actually won two I won two like Warhammer plaques
Yeah.
that were like from the official
Yeah.
Games Workshop GTs, like when
Jim,
Games Workshop used to make them. And those are
your
actually
your
two of my most like prized possessions, like as far as like trophies. They're the coolest.
your plaques are allowed to drink in the UK.
What's happening? Yeah.
They're
No,
18 years old.
okay, yeah, I think it's 2002, 2004. That's I feel like such a grognard. Hey, I was 16 at the time. It was a big deal.
There you go. I'm sure it was. However, but you winning two plaques in 2004 does not mean that the prize support.
All I'm saying is like, even I've gotten a host of different trophies from like unofficial events, but the official ones from Games Workshop always have like a more special place in my heart. That's all I'm saying.
I mean,
Okay,
I'm going to be honest. Games Workshop ones don't quite fit on the shelf. I have to put them on top of all the shelving because otherwise I can't fit them in here. So yeah, they have a special place on my side too, but not because I have a choice about it.
It's because they physically have a special place.
They physically, although I need to come second at an event, I'm missing that one. I've got a bronze and I've got a gold. But
kind of funny tangent
I need
story.
to throw a game at some point.
I had a girl over like I don't know, like 3-4 weeks ago.
How quickly did she leave after seeing the trophies?
No, listen, it's actually a good story. So I had this is actually a horrible story, but it's actually funny. So I had this girl over, and like my like you can my painting studio and like my paints, it's all like out of my apartment. Like you come in, you see it right away. I don't have like a special like room where I had everything in. And a lot of people ask me, and I have a few models. I don't keep most of my models on display. Most of them are away in cases, but I do keep a few models up in display. You can see me up there. So people ask, and almost unanimously, people are very intrigued. And I don't know if they just fake it or if it's like genuine intriguement, but for the most part, everyone's very intrigued. But we got quite drunk, and I think she had started asking me about. You'll love this story. She started asking me about it after we were like quite drunk. She's like, okay, like tell me about this. Like, what is? I think she was drunk enough to have the courage to ask me about it. She's like, okay, like tell me about these models or something along those lines. And I kind of started getting into it. I was like, like this is the thing, and the game, blah blah. And, I was like, I do some painting and I won some awards from it. And she was like, oh, like show me your awards. So next thing I know, because I keep all my like plaques in a cupboard. Here I am with this like random, like she wasn't a random girl. She was like a girl I'd seen before, sitting on like my kitchen floor, going through my like awards shelf at like 4 a.m, and I'm showing her my Warhammer awards. And I'm just like, what is my life right now?
Finally, we've got a use for you telling someone that you were ranked 1 in the ITC once.
Yeah, I showed her my like Hobby Track champion award. Oh my god, I'm crying because it's so funny. And I just remember afterwards, like the next day, I was like, what have I done? Like, oh my god, I'm never gonna see this person again.
Did you see her again?
Yeah, I've seen her again.
Okay. So it worked. Okay.
Yeah, it's actually funny because I have a few friends of mine, like real life friends that like know I stream and they know I paint and stuff because they've been over and I tell them, and they're like, oh, I watch your stream sometimes, but like they never ever interact in the chat, so I never know that they're watching. But they'll be like, oh, I'm like like I have my friend I don't know, she'll my friend Sarah, she's always like, oh, I love watching your stream like on YouTube or whatever, and like she's like, I'm your biggest fan.
Yes, like me on,
I'm like, all right, like it's a little weird. Like next time, why don't you like let me know in chat if you're here? So Sarah, if you're watching, hello. Anyways,
there you go.
All right.
Shall we go through the remaining bullet points?
Okay, so anyway, sorry. To the point, I'm excited for the new award. So I think that's all positive. Now more for champions. So they talk about winners of major ITC events, which I put a star besides that because we'll see what they count as major. Will be invited to compete at the official Warhammer final.
Right. Okay. But I need to make a point about this. So it says, where the best players in the world will get a chance to battle it out for eternal glory. Right. Can we stop pretending that whoever is high on the ITC is de facto the best in the world?
Yes.
When I hear the best in the world, I'm thinking fucking Brady, fucking, I don't know, Michael Jordan shit, like that kind of level, okay? Like top Messi, Ronaldo, those kinds of people, right? Okay, I'm not talking about, well, this guy's ranked 4th in the UK. No. If you're going to call someone the best in the world, you better be, or like maybe one of the best in the world, they've got to at least be de facto the best in your country. At least, right? At least. Now, when you think of ITC events, oh, look, there's lots of Toms. That's beautiful. I like it. More for the chat, they'll love it.
It's like infinite Toms.
Infinite Toms. When I'm looking at the ITC, I'm thinking Canada, US, UK. right?
Yeah.
Where else is massive for ITC?
Like yeah, that's basically it.
Right. Like, has anyone from fucking the ITC heard of Skark? Has anyone heard of Erding? Has anyone heard of these legendary players across Europe? Of course they haven't.
No.
Of course they haven't. Have I heard of any of the best players out in Asia? No, but the Asian scene's like, I don't know enough about it to comment. There might be some great players out there, I don't know. But the point is, I don't know.
Yeah.
So how can I ever claim best in world?
Right.
Right? Like,
Yeah,
just...
and like what I will say, like from like anecdotal experience is I remember when we were doing practice rounds with Team Canada for the WTC, and we did a few we did some like scrimmages versus like I think some Germans, I think Poland at one point. I can't even remember. I was off the team at that point, retired, but I think last year we were doing a lot of tabletop simulator, and like some of the players, and I don't know if it's like a tabletop simulator thing, but like some of the players in Germany were like so good. They destroyed us, like everyone. And I'm like, I read their names. Like here's the funny thing. I would read their names in chat. I'd have no idea who this person was. Like they could have been the best player in Germany, but a lot of them knew who I was, right? And they would come into the game being like, oh, I'm really excited to play you. You're a Jim Vessel. And I would just get completely creamed by them because here I am. They've heard of me. They think I'm like some big like whatever. And but they're actually much better than me, right? And they're just destroying me, right? So it was just a really funny. It was just a really funny thing. They're like, "Oh, I'm so glad I got to play you," and I'm like, and they must have felt so good about themselves, right?
Primary language, yeah.
And the other thing is like,
English is the primary language and play ITC, and you haven't heard of them.
Do you think? I'm just like, I hope they don't think that like I'm actually the best. Team? Sorry.
Like, can you name me any of the players from the treble-winning German team that won the ETC 2014, 2015, 2016? No, I can't. I can't either, and I was there in 2016, right? I think Erding was probably one of them. But that's my point, right? It's difficult to like top players, yeah, sure. Best in X continent, yeah, sure, absolutely fine. I don't know. I'm very careful whenever I'm throwing around like the term "best in world" around because I think I really don't want to. I'm all about the story. Like I want to still be involved in this hobby even after I've stopped playing, and I see an exit strategy for me. Like I've been doing this a long time, bro. Like. But I'm still interested in the competition, and I still want to talk about the stories and the great timelines of the legendary players.
Yeah.
Right. But if I start bandying around the term "best in world" for everyone that turns up at a GW Invitational from like free, see, Paul knows them. Paul knows them. For everyone that turns up at like this GW Invitational, like based on North American and Northwestern European meta, I can't devalue the term that way. Like, that's not to say that, like, some of these players can't be the best in the world or aren't. I just don't have the information that would allow me to say that they are, right? I can't verify that. And it's the same with, like, to why I value the WTC so much, because in theory, what it is a meritocracy where every country tries to bring their best 8 players, right?
So when are we going to hear the announcement of the WTC Games Workshop partnership? I feel like
I honestly don't know. I'm not involved.
No,
like,
but
I don't know if that's even going to be a thing.
And I will say is like hopefully, and I don't know about you, but well, actually, let's get a little bit deeper in this because I want to bring it back to my concerns about this. So the next thing is winners of the major ITC events will receive a redeemable code for their choice of Warhammer Age of Sigmar or 40k Rules Entitlement. We're not quite sure what a Rules Entitlement is.
Imagine the prize being getting the rules being considered an exquisite prize.
I just don't understand this. It's like what does this mean? You're gonna get a code for like a free codex in your Warhammer app? Like it's not quite clear what rules entitlement. So let's put that aside. Best in faction winners will also receive rules entitlements for the subsequent calendar year for their relative game system. So does this mean they get all books digitally? Like, and then here's the thing that kind of like got me thinking. I'm like, maybe this is a hint that we're gonna get digital rules, but I'm like, no, this can't be that because that would be like completely not Games Workshop's. Like that would be a lie. The hobby track and competitive winners are gonna get an army of their choice up to 2,000 points starting this weekend. So like, I can imagine Maddie being like, "Here, give me 170 racks." Love it, which is cool. And then top ITC finishers will have the opportunity to participate in the all-new balanced data slate. Weren't we supposed to get one like 2 months ago?
What happened to the big check?
I think that's an FLG thing.
But if this is now a Games Workshop thing,
Well, so
are they
that's the
not doing
thing is
big
I don't
check?
know if it is an. So here's the thing. It's not clear, and I'd love to pick brain. It's not clear, and we'll get into it in a sec. What the
More
actual
information
relationship
required
is?
again.
Is this Games Workshop supporting the ITC, or is this Games Workshop taking over the ITC in a lot of ways? And then we get into the last part. The tournament organizers are going to get codexes and battle tomes. This is the part that I laughed at. So they're fully up to date on all the units, missions, and rules. You guys really like Games Workshop thinks that the codexes, and that's like implying that the codexes are the place for the most up to date rules and missions. Like, I was like,
Mate,
that's actually a joke.
Mate, I was saying this on a Spice Hunter on Thursday. I want to see a Lehman Russ battle tank in the Codex bear no resemblance to its actual rules.
Yeah.
At some point.
We'll be increasing the amount of terrain and support, product support available. Again, I don't know what that means. Like, are TOs going to get free product? Because being available doesn't mean anything. TOs will have a chance to join a TO advisory group. So kind of like the current ITC TO like group that already exists. And then the organizers will have the opportunity to participate in the all-new balanced data slate feedback group. So my biggest concern, and this is kind of like where I think that there's a lot not said here, which is for what? Games Workshop does nothing for free, and I don't see them doing all this out of the warmness and kindness of their hearts. I mean, maybe I'm just a cynical, but here's my biggest fear. We're going to start seeing hey, if you want to be part of the Games Workshop ITC partnership program, here are some things you need to do. You need to have a Games Workshop model only policy at your table or at your event. You can't have 3D printed models. Yep. You can't have maybe there's other sorts of restrictions. There can't, there's like I could start maybe like people have to use like, army lists, Warhammer Plus army lists, whatever. And so my biggest fear, and I'm sure and I'm hoping that they clarify this at some future date, and especially that you reminded me that it's no longer the independent circuit, it's the international circuit, which is this the beginning of Games Workshop getting their tendrils into the ITC scene as a prelude for them either completely taking it over and or imposing like pretty strict requirements on these events? And honestly, if TOs are going to be sweetened with these things, so if I'm a TO and Games Workshop saying, hey, we'll send you free codexes, we'll send you some terrain, but you got to make sure it's all GW models, that's like the trade-off. If I'm a TO, that could be tempting. And so what are your thoughts? Do you think this is insidious, or do you think this is like a positive thing?
I mean, my thoughts are I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily, which is weird, but I also have my own kind of, I think you were ready for that. I also kind of have my own invested interest in it because all my models are GW. I don't have any 3D printed stuff.
Mine are too.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate the freedom.
No, I 100% get it. I 100% get it. But at the same time, it's like, it's not like the ITC was always just this altruistic organization that was only there to provide something cool for the players, right? It was there to incentivize you to go to big events. That's what it was for. It's not like it was just a community effort. And GW running it, they have a different and things that we want to promote through it. But I don't really care, to be honest, mate. It's not that massive for me. The thing I want to talk about though, are we going to get into the playtesting thing? Because I feel like a lot of people have brought.
Yeah. So as an aside to this is that obviously, we can have a whole conversation about it. One thing that I did want to bring up though, and to your point, is I'm of the same boat. Like, I do own a few like creature caster models here and there. I own but I have resin bits in my army. I have resin bases on some of my armies. I've always been a Games Workshop, almost a pure Games Workshop hobbyist as far as like models. I've used an alternative model from here to there, but almost exclusively Games Workshop. I still don't like the precedent. You know what I'm saying? I still don't like what it means overall for a lot of other players.
I understand that.
It makes me uncomfortable that they're going to be able to exert that kind of control. And then to your point, as far as the balance side of it, I thought we were supposed to get a balanced data set every 3 months, and didn't we get the first one like 5 months ago? Like, what happened to?
No, the first one came out. So I think it was meant to be 3 months, then chapter approved, then 3 months get another one, then another chapter approved, right? So it's meant to be like every 3 months you get a balance update, and then you get a chapter approved every 6 months. But I thought the chapter approved was part of that balance cycle. So it was like
Okay, so
November,
you
you
don't think
got
we'll
the
get
first
one until
one.
maybe late spring at this point, or mid spring?
Yeah, you get one in May, I think. I would assume that would be my assumption. I think one of the things people have been bringing up a lot. Well, firstly on the events thing, I don't think the GW influencing the like control of the ITC would necessarily change anything about people's freedom to play with third-party models. Mainly because I don't think the GW can completely monopolize the tournament circuit regardless. I
No,
think
I
that
agree with you.
so long as Games Workshop are like, if Games Workshop end up running all these ITC events, say, hey, you've got to run these models, well, then there's going to be a market that pops up for people who want to run 3D printed or like in their own models, right? Like maybe they've got like something from like a different game system, or they found some really fucking cool model that someone's produced, like their Patreon or something, and they want to use it at a tournament and say, oh, this is my X fucking fantasy generic demon, right? You know, so you're always going to get people that pop up to fill the market space, right? And it's not like, you know, they control that. Where there's demand, then there'll be supply in that case. With the playtesting thing, and being invited to be part of the Only Balance Slate, let's do a hypothetical here. If I was part of the Balance Data Slate feedback group, what do I think that would change? I think it would change jack shit. I don't think it would change anything, right? Because what am I going to say that the people who aren't on there aren't already going to say? Right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I can say, yeah, these Dracari points changes are fucking dumb, but if people like listen, they're not going to listen to me. It's not going to fucking matter.
Well,
Just do whatever they want regardless.
you're on the blacklist, so I don't think they'd listen to you regardless.
No, but you understand the point, right? You understand the point.
Yeah, but I guess my,
yeah.
you know, and getting into that a little bit more, like my biggest issue with this balanced data slate is it's like, what is it supposed to be? Because, you know, we have you guys are saying chapter approved is our points updates, right? Look at the points updates are a mess from this chapter approved. Death Guard got crazy nerfs. Drukhari got better. like a lot of armies got nerfs that make no sense or are 6 months old in a 6-month-old meta, right? And then we have a balanced data slate, the first one, that was some rules updates for units, but like, and it helped a little bit, like it helped knights a little bit, there's stuff there, but like, are we seeing guard rise to the top because of 2+ armor save Leman Russes? No. Like a lot of there's no actual balance there. It's like here are some like bone, it's called we're going to throw you a bone data slate, but it's like, if the changes you make don't actually create balance, right? Or not intended to create balance, then don't call it that. Because for me, the biggest problem with it is like, if you're not going to put points updates in the balance data slate, then it's completely pointless. Like there's no point in doing it, because you're not going to be able to special rules your way three to 4 times a year in between chapter approves. Let's say we get them say like every year, or 6 months or whatever they're saying now. I can't even keep track anymore. But in between that, you can't special rules your way out of a badly balanced games. It's got to be combined. Rules and points together create balance, right? Like you can't just keep raising and lowering stuff, right? So yeah, don't get me started about 2 and Chaos Space Marines, which unfortunately we're not even going to get now.
So
thanks to Tyranids.
I take you to notice.
No, someone in chat brought it up. Someone in chat brought it up, so I refrained. I managed to hold off until someone in chat brought it up. But I guess my point is like, the whole idea of a balanced data slate doesn't make sense to me at all, because it's going to actually make the game more complicated and more convoluted, more inaccessible, especially if it's in multiple places. Like, are we going to have to download 4 different data slates, or is it going to be like one singular central place for all of the rules updates and stuff like that? Like, you know what I'm saying? Or is it going to be like in addition to, or is it going to be like, here's the November one, now scroll to the bottom of the FAQ page for the previous one? Like, is it going to be just a nightmare just to get? Like, I don't know.
I guess we'll find out, mate. It's one of those where it's just like we're talking about a lot of hypotheticals of what could happen, right? And it's the same as the always a lot of missing information from the ITC announcement. It's like, yeah, but we can't really fill in the blanks, right? We can speculate and about
that's
what's
the fun part, right?
You know? I know, but I'm not Germer.
I love speculating. That's the only part I like, because the truth, like, I'm trying to think of the last time we speculated in a negative way and Games Workshop proved us wrong in like a positive way, where we were like, Games Workshop is definitely gonna fuck this up, and then they did it and it actually was like really positive. Like I can't remember a time where like that was the case. Almost unanimously, it's like we speculate that shit's gonna be bad and it's bad. Like
I mean, that's like blind monkey at a dartboard, but the dartboard's right in front of his face at that
Yeah.
point. It's just like it's gonna. I don't know. It's just one of those, man. Like we'll have to see, I guess. We'll have to see, and maybe we can discuss that properly when we when we find out exactly what we're going to be doing.
I guess last little question for you, Tom. Do you think,
Yeah, go for it.
and would you want I know WTC is something where you've invested a lot of your time and energy into, as far as like your competitive kind of like focus. Is that something where do you think you personally would be open to it? And then do you think broader the WTC Captains Council and coaches and people that kind of run the WTC would be open to it? Like, would you be more open to a bigger partnership with Games Workshop? Because I almost feel like the ETC/WC kind of cut its teeth on its opposition and kind of like a lot of it's like I guess like difference with Games Workshop. It's almost like baked into the cake in a lot of ways.
I mean, equally, we've got a lot of shit over the last few years about how similar our missions were to GW.
Yeah.
Remember when we ran primaries and then we had maelstroms as secondaries, and everyone was saying, "Oh, well, WT shit, it uses maelstroms." No one bothered to actually look at how we were using the maelstroms at all. It was silly buggers from people who didn't understand what was going on, and yet we got criticism for saying, "Oh, yeah, it's too similar to the Games Workshop rule system." Okay, fine. It's one of those where I have mixed. It depends on how they do it, because if you're going to incorporate the WTC, you're pretty much going to have to end up incorporating the entire process of how you select teams, right? And I'd have no idea how that'd look. So I would be skeptical, but I would be open-minded based upon what that could look like. It's just one of those where it's a hypothetical, and I get that obviously. It's a fair question to ask, but at the same time, it's going to entirely depend upon like how that would manifest, right? So I would not be entirely against the idea, but I wouldn't be entirely for the idea either. It would depend on how they do it.
Do you think we're going to see, like, I guess, do you think with Games Workshop being more integrated in the ITC, like, obviously they did all these US Opens this year, right? And a lot of the prizes of the US Opens were very similar to what they're touting as these ITC prizes, right? You got the flight, you get the final. Do you think they kind of did these events in the US where like these are not making us money, they're super difficult, it's like it's clashing with existing large scale events, so rather than like beating them, let's join them, and instead of us getting like official Games Workshop events, we're just going to get these like Games Workshop ITC sponsored events? Or do you think this means like Games Workshop is going to continue running events? Like, I'm really curious if that means like, they kind of gave up and we're like, what, let's just basically join the ITC at this point.
I think it's just a natural progression. I think the ITC is so integral to the entire US scene that if you don't integrate it yourself, you're just going to end up running against it, right? I mean, as you already said, you got ITC points from the GW Open events over there, no? Right?
Yep.
Is that correct? Yeah,
like
so
it's
just a natural progression.
3 of Richard Siegler's Open wins were the US Opens.
Yeah, there you go. They were GW events, and I mean, the only GW Open events only started happening in the last year anyway, ever since after it became the international tournament circuit. So I think it's just a natural progression.
All right, Tom. That's basically it.
Sorry about the last 20 minutes. So
it's all right. Where can people find you online if you want to check out your shenanigans?
So I'm doing a lot of stuff with Team Wales, Honest Wargamer. I've got a new project that I'm going to be announcing next week as well. So if you want to see any of that shit, just make a Twitter account and follow. First of all, follow at Jim Bessel, then follow Innis at Wilson. Innis something Wilson. I can't remember what it's fucking.
Yeah, and that's gonna be our show today, guys.
And then
again.
Follow at Sasnag40k. SAE Snag 40k.
Well, thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. And if you guys enjoyed the content, make sure to throw me a like on whatever platforms you like. I appreciate everyone tuning in today. That's the episode of Politics and Plastic. We'll be back later this week, potentially, or maybe even next week with Alex McDougall, Canadian hero.
That should be good.
And Friday will be the inaugural episode of Hobby Happy Hour, where I will be painting and drinking with you. So if you guys want to hang out and have some happy hour with me, tune in on Friday. You can check out the Twitch schedule on the Discord, which is linked below, or on the YouTube channel as well. So that's it. So talk to you guys later.
Thanks for having me on.